What's been on my mind this week is how can we live with people who think they know the truth and who want to push their version of the truth onto the rest of us? Here we are. It's 2020. We're 2 decades into the 21st century. We've split the atom. We've discovered quarks and the most microscopic of things. We've made telescopes that let us peer into the ageless past. Still, there are people who think that everything there is to know about life and truth is written down in the Bible. Not just any people. There are people at the highest levels of our government and military and judicial system whose values come from a literal interpretation of the Bible. That means Noah's Ark actually happened. That means they believe the earth is actually only 6,000 or 7,000 years old. Now, don't get me wrong. I find a lot of value in the Bible. I find it to be filled with great values, depending on how it's read and interpreted. But when it is read literally and without regard to science, it can be dangerous. Where do we come from? Where are we going? These are ageless questions. As we enter the 2020s, I want to explore how we can celebrate the marvel of creation and how we can save and preserve it for future generations. But how can we live with people who think they know the truth and want their version of the truth to dictate other people's lives? There are a lot of people who seem to live in fear that any competing ideas of truth will lead to immorality and death and meaninglessness. I'm talking about people who are convinced that their truth is superior to all other ideas of truth. Now, if belief is just a personal matter, you have your beliefs, I have mine, that would be one thing. Live and let live. But when someone's convinced that their religious perspective contains the truths and the values that are applicable to all people everywhere through all time, that's a problem. The question on my mind this morning is, how do we live with such people? We have a lot of experience with this here in Oklahoma. And as I listened to Mariella telling that beautiful children's story of the Sky Lady, an Iroquois creation story, I was reminded of what happened back in 2005 at the Tulsa Zoo. The mayor of Tulsa at the time pushed through a proposal to add an exhibit on creationism. Creationism being a Christian pseudoscience. And they wanted this creationism exhibit right next to the exhibit which is there, which explains evolution. Now, he did this after hearing thoughtful and heartfelt testimony against the idea from dozens of zoo professionals, religious and interfaith leaders, as well as scientists, lawyers, and other concerned citizens. Never before had the mayor or the Tulsa Park and Recreation Board told the zoo professionals what kind of exhibit to display. Now, the reason why is that neither the mayor or the Park and Recreation Board members have the education or the expertise in zoology or science or museum curation. This action was unprecedented. The argument was that there are other images of religion already in the zoo, but there are none that mention Christianity. The centerpiece of this argument was a statue of the Hindu god Ganesh. You may have seen it. Ganesh is an elephant-headed god that comes from India. It's displayed outside of the elephants exhibit, and the display is explained inside. Now, in this debate, the promoters of creationism portrayed themselves as being quite reasonable by saying that they were not asking for the removal of the Ganesh statue or any other religious material. All they wanted was to be able to have passages from the Bible also in the zoo. But let me make it clear that this controversy had nothing to do with the statue of Ganesh or any other religious references in the Tulsa Zoo. The creationists' real concern was the evolution display. They weren't concerned that their children were going to go to the zoo and see the statue of Ganesh with its elephant head and say, "Oh my gosh, look at this statue. Now it all makes sense. Jesus Christ is not my Lord and Savior. This elephant-headed God is." This was not their concern. What their concern was that their children would go to the zoo and see the exhibit on evolution and also fossils dated millions of years old, and their children might begin to question what they're being taught in Sunday school. So let's be clear. The creationists are not really concerned about the Ganesh statue, or another point that they brought up was the statue of the globe, which they were saying teaches paganism because it reads, "The earth is our mother, the sky is our father." The issue here is science, and specifically the concept of evolution. And yet, thoughtful people want to know, why are there images of and references of any religion within a public zoo? It's a good question. Here's why. Tulsa Zoo is one of 9 zoos in our country that is an accredited living museum. That's to say that ours is more than a typical zoo. It's a museum, and it has an object to teach not only about animals, but also about how these animals have influenced the cultures of the world, and to teach about the cultural contexts of the places where these animals come from. It's this broader mission that helped Tulsa Zoo be judged America's favorite zoo in a national competition sponsored by Microsoft. So in the elephant exhibit, for example, there's a display about elephants and how they've influenced the cultures of the world. The display includes this statue of the god Ganesh, a plaque describing that this is a Hindu god. There's a reference to Buddha, whose mother was said to be impregnated in a dream by a white elephant. Both of these religions come from lands where elephants roam. And the display also has the image of the Republican elephant from our country. It also has Dumbo, the flying elephant. It also has a book of Horton Hears a Who, the Dr. Seuss book, the ways in which elephants have influenced our culture. The express intention of the exhibit is to teach about elephants and the ways to show us how elephants have become part of many cultures around the world. It's a museum exhibit designed by museum professionals about a secular subject, elephants. Contrast that with a creationism display that quotes scriptures from the Bible. Such a display has the express intention of teaching a religious belief. The elephant display in no way promotes a religion, and it has a clearly defined and recognizable non-religious purpose. The creationism display would clearly promote a religious belief In fact, that is its purpose, and the advocates of this display at the time and in other places around our country say that is the purpose, to teach religious ideals and values. Now, imagine if we were to pass a law in this country that said that no museums could refer in any of their exhibits to any religions, no religious objects or images. We would have to empty out most of our museums. Instead, the test is, as it should be, is an exhibit's intention or effect to promote a religion? If it is, it's still allowed in any private museum in the country, but not in a public one. The promoter and the designers of the creationism exhibit was a fundamentalist Christian who believes that God literally created the world in 6 days, and he believed that the earth is less than 10,000 years old. In the argument before the Park and Recreation Board, those in favor of the exhibit argued dinosaur bones were planted in the earth by God to test our faith. This was an argument being made before the board in our city not too long ago. There was another argument. Someone stood up and said the Grand Canyon is proof that Noah existed. Now, despite these spurious arguments, the mayor at the time asked the Park and Recreation Board members to vote with him for the display. This is despite the fact that the exhibit went against the wishes of the zoo's professional staff. And the arguments against them were legal, scientific, and educational. The motion was made, it was seconded. And at that point, I remember I stood up and I said, can I ask for a point of information? Now, this was, the public discussion period was over, and I wasn't sure they were going to let me speak. But at that, I asked the city attorney, they did let me speak, and so I asked the city attorney to read the legal opinion that his office gave the mayor regarding the display. It said that such a display would be legal if it were surrounded by similar displays of other religions. I then asked if the proposed motion complied with the legal opinion. The mayor immediately said to me, yes, of course it does. You've got the statue of Ganesh and these other religious displays already in the zoo. And then I explained that I felt pretty certain that the religious statues was not the same as a display of written scripture promoting a theological belief, and the mayor did not agree, and I asked the attorney for his opinion. This is when it started to get really interesting. The city attorney agreed with me that in order to comply with the legal opinion, the creationism display would have to be surrounded by other similar displays from other religions, including their scriptures. The mayor then backed down and allowed an amendment to be added to the motion that other religious creation stories would be included in the display as well. The mayor then said that so then I asked, well, who's going to decide which of the thousands of creation stories are going to be put in there and which are going to be excluded? And the mayor explained that he and the Park and Recreation Board would decide. I asked them if they thought they had the expertise to determine that, but the lawyer said it would be legal, and so they voted, and they voted, quite to my disbelief, 3-1 in favor of the motion. So the next day, I sent out an email inviting anyone who was concerned about the proposed display of religious scriptures in the Tulsa Zoo to meet and discuss it right here at All Souls up in Tulsa. I know Brian Cross was there, and Greg Bledsoe, and a number of others who are here. And after almost 50 people showed up the next day, including ministers of many denominations, scientists, lawyers, and others, and a group was formed right here that day, and we called it Friends of Religion and Science. Which the acronym is FORS. We wanted to say, we're not against anything. We're friends of religion. We appreciate religion. We appreciate science as well, and we want to see that both of them are not harmed. And we feel that both are too important to become politicized. We created a petition. We gathered over 3,000 signatures within 10 days against the display. In the meantime, this decision of the Tulsa Park and Recreation Board was written up in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNN International did a big story on it, USA Today was talking about it, NPR had stories. We were making Kansas look intelligent. The news was spreading around the world that Tulsa would be the first city to include such a religious display in their zoo. Then, exactly a month later, on July 7th, the mayor called an emergency meeting of the Park and Recreation Board, and in that meeting, he reemphasized his position in favor of the display. I would argue that he reemphasized his position to pander to the religious right. A motion was made by another board member to rescind the earlier decision, and it carried 3-1 with the mayor's vote as the one vote against. That ended this attempt for the Christian creationism exhibit in the Tulsa Zoo to go alongside the evolution exhibit. I also believe it ended that mayor's political career. Science has given humanity a great gift in discovering the universal creation story. A story that includes all peoples and all cultures and all languages, all plants and all animals and all religions. Within this single, universal, scientific story of existence, there's thousands of cultural stories in various languages that for centuries have been told by people to explain how the world was created. In these stories, they're more than just stories about creation, but they're embedded with values. You could see in the story we heard today from the Sky Woman's story, how it talked about the importance of all the animals and how we all play a role and we're part of an interconnected web. I love the fact that it's a woman who created all of existence and all of those things. So there's so many values embedded in these stories. They're beautiful stories. They come from many lands. But when we accept evolution as the universal creation story, then all the thousands of religious creation stories are no longer in competition to be the literal truth of how we got here. Religions and cultures no longer have to argue that their version is the one and only correct version, and if you don't believe in that, then all hell will break loose, so to speak. Whoever edited and compiled the Bible placed 2 contradictory creation stories right at the front. If you haven't read it for a while, go back, pull out Genesis, and read the first 2 chapters, and you will read 2 completely contradictory stories of how the world was created. I believe that this was a clear message from those who compiled the Bible to say to us, don't take these stories literally. It's as if the compilers of the Bible made the first 2 chapters completely contradictory so that nobody would ever consider these stories to be literal facts. These 2 contradictory statements in the first book of the Bible serve almost like a disclaimer to announce at the outset that this is a book of metaphors and possibilities and ideas and images that are not to be taken as literal fact. The writers of the Bible thought that the earth was the center of the universe. My favorite example is in the 10th chapter of Joshua, when Joshua orders the sun in the sky to stand still so that the Israelites could slaughter the Amorites without the inconvenience of nightfall. First of all, this is a pretty dubious reason for a miracle. So that one tribe can slaughter their enemies. But second of all, cosmologically, we know today that the sun cannot stop in the sky since it is the earth that's moving. And if the earth were to suddenly stop in its axis, the gravitational forces would destroy our entire planet and everything on it forever. The Bible is filled with pre-scientific cosmology, and it has no place in the scientific classroom, and it has no place in a zoological museum. We've all heard fundamentalist-minded people say things when they, talking about the theory of evolution, will say something like, "Don't tell me I'm related to apes." Now, I've heard this for years, and the fact of the matter is, now that we've discovered DNA, we know that we're not only related to apes, we're related to zucchini. So let's get over that. Instead of reinterpreting their faith in light of science, they're trying to reinterpret science. Despite the fact that the broad consensus of the world scientists agree that humans are impacting global warming, we have some of the same religious people denying the science. The implications on our lives and on our future are likely to be devastating. Australia is burning as I speak. This isn't just some horrific result that is going to come in some perceived future. It's happening right now. People are gathering on the beaches. They're being told to get in the water to survive in Australia right now. So let's get back to my question. How do we live in community, in a democracy, with people who are convinced that they know the one and only truth, and they feel threatened by anyone who disagrees and doesn't want to do it the way that they do it? First of all, I feel like we need to be polite and respectful and loving. I hope I have been, all humor aside in this message, as we should be toward all people. But we cannot accommodate people in their attempts to politicize and theologize science and education in this country. Now, keep in mind that literal interpretations of the Bible don't only come with scientific assumptions, they come with cultural assumptions as well about women, about gay and lesbian people, about the environment, and other ideas that affect our real lives. In the coming years, and as quickly as possible, we need to continue to articulate and disseminate a compelling alternative interpretation of religion and the Bible. And we need to live kind, compassionate, and sustainable lives to demonstrate through our actions that good people come with many beliefs, even agnostic beliefs. And we need to support interfaith organizations like Americans and organizations like Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, who do to battle around these things, and the ACLU and others. We need to pay attention to who's going on our school boards and our museum boards and on the bench as judges. We can't be quiet and accommodating. We need to let our voices be heard. We need to not only have this thought in our head, we need to have a fire in our belly about what's happening in our world and in our democracy. I feel some fire. I don't know if you can feel it this morning, but as we enter this new decade, I hope you feel some passion about this as well. And let me tell you, it's great to be part of a congregation and a community in this time and this place that's willing to take these issues seriously and courageously put ourselves out there and say no, and be willing to stand up for science. stand up for science as well as religion. Happy New Year. I love you.
Beautiful hymn tune, that traditional, majestic tune, and he's written some new lyrics called Blue Boat Home. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing together this beautiful tune, song called Blue Boat Home. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known, the wide universe is the ocean, travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Hey, we're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256 or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.